all what I did in the Marine Corps is just to prepare me for something else. I don't think that was my purpose. I think that was just a stepping stone. I think that was just some tools in my toolbox to help whatever it is, whatever my purpose is, whatever God put me on this earth to do.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have a really fun episode for you guys. We are joined with Jesse Phillips, who served in the United States Marine Corps and deployed multiple times to Afghanistan. Jesse is a man who has lived more than the average person. From growing up in a family with 13 kids, being raised as a cowboy in Mississippi, to following his passion in filmmaking after his military career, this episode is a crazy one. Through the ups and downs Jesse has had to overcome, he is full of positivity and wisdom we know you all will enjoy listening to in today's show. Real stories, real heroes, for a real cause. This is Never Left Behind, the podcast. Jesse, what's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm good, man. How are y'all too?
Doing good.
Doing
I like
good.
the cowboy hat, and it looks like you're like in a nice little like cabin. Is that like the style home you're in?
Yeah. It's my office. Yeah. It's my office. It's my one little bed. My office was in my laundry room in my house, and I have a wife and 4 kids and a dog, and it didn't work very well, so I took old tack room and turned it into my office. So
I like it. So
Nice.
for everybody listening, what's kind of cool about having you on is, one, I feel like obviously we do all 4 branches, but we don't have mini Marine Corps, and I think we've had a few, which has been great. So it's great to have you on and hear your story. But also, how did we meet again? Did we meet through our mutual friend Emily with Fox News, or was it
We
through?
did.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure that's how we met.
so that's kind of cool. So people listening, obviously Jesse, isn't in the book. We haven't really met in person, but we have a lot of mutual friends in the veteran space. So it's great to kind of unofficially meet you and have you on the podcast. How did your relationship? I want to get started with, because obviously I know you have a ranching background like myself and working on different operations. How did you get linked up with Micah Fink and Heroes and Horses?
So y'all know the Veterans Project?
Yeah.
Tim Kolzak.
Yeah, he's
All right,
in our
so
book,
Tim,
actually.
Oh, good. Have you had him on yet?
Not yet.
No. So we,
He's
when we interviewed Nate Boyer for the book, he recommended that we get in touch with Tim. And when I met with Tim, he was doing kind of like a really cool, similar project to us, like photographing veterans, all of our allied veterans. And so that makes sense that obviously we met through them.
Yeah. So Tim's a good buddy, man. So is Nate. Nate Boy and I worked on a couple projects together, and
Yeah.
so I was Tim was doing a project on Fink. He had just done one on me, and so we just kind of. I've always wanted to go to Montana. I was like, look, I'll just shoot behind the scenes for your project while I was out there, and so I just went out there, and Mike and I, met and became good friends, and I've been out there several times since, and about to go back in 2 or 3 weeks for their gala.
Yeah, I just talked to Micah on the phone 2 days ago about the gala, and I'm trying to figure out a way if I can make it out there for it. I'm not sure if I can, but I was talking to him a little bit about that, and obviously it's a great organization. And for people listening that don't know, it's basically a equine therapy veteran-owned organization that helps treat veterans with PTSD or any anxiety-related issues, puts them in with a wild horse, allows them to break in that horse. And I think it's a little over 100 days.
It's 41 days.
Oh, 41 days, excuse me.
Yeah. But it's not one of those veteran. First of all, I'm very cynical about the veteran space. So if I'm going to hurt feelings, I'm sorry.
We're all about hurting feelings.
Oh yeah.
It's not one of those a free hunting weekend and therapy through killing pigs out of a helicopter or something like that. It's not that. It's an actual. Not there's anything wrong with that, but it's not necessarily helping people. It's just giving them something fun to do.
Yeah.
This is it's one of the only ones that I would say is doing a pretty good job of helping. Because it's 41 days. These guys are coming and they're, you know how veterans get. We get fat and out of shape when we get out, and then you start getting something from the VA and you realize you don't have to work as much as normal, and you start doing this and you feel a bit depressed, so you go take this pill and they cram all this down your throat, and then all of a sudden your life is, you don't have any purpose or drive. And not everybody, but some, the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so this program is they're on Whole30 the whole time. They're getting up at 4, they're PTing, their pole camp's like a mile up the mountain.
That's badass.
They have to walk up and down it just to go get their stuff, and every morning, every night. And most of these guys haven't been around horses either, so you have to start them pretty basic. And then by the end of it, they've been on, I work like 500 miles on horseback all through the back country, and they have pack mules and everything. And it's not a coddling. It's not a. I have a hard time even calling it therapy from what I've experienced. It's more of a.
It's hard work.
It's work. It's more of a vice, because you don't get better without putting pressure on yourself in any way. And it's basically the pressure that it's a program that puts pressure on you, and you figure out who you are through it. Yeah.
And Dan, I think you know this by now, but people listening that don't know anything about the equine industry or horses, breaking a wild horse and becoming accustomed to riding in 40 days is pretty insane.
Yeah. So these, I wouldn't call them wild. I call them green broke. Most of them are green broke, I think. So they've had a few, they've had a good many rides on them, but they're not bomb proof trail horse. Yeah, no. Mm-hmm. And it's a really great program. And like I said, I don't do a lot of talking about nonprofits because I don't trust a lot of them, but this one I do.
Same. Yeah. I actually have a buddy who went through the whole program, and I know it's probably saved his life, and he talks about it all the time. And it's a pretty incredible program. And you're right. There's too many other veteran programs out there that are out there to benefit veterans, but in all actuality, they just give handouts and don't really give purpose or try and reshape people's mentality and really try and heal them. So I really love what they're doing up there.
Yeah, it's sad because I think a lot of them, they're not all snakes in the grass. I think a lot of people mean well. They're really trying to help, and they're trying to do something for them. Mm-hmm. But I think that the whole system has been set up to try to make us, dependent on victims. And then you get out, and the VA system is to keep you in that mindset of everybody needs to give me something, take care of me, and then you go, and then instead of getting out of that mindset and getting in the real world, because the real world doesn't really care if you served or not. They like to pat you on the back, but if you can't do your job, then they don't need you.
Yeah.
It kind of takes you out of that, and it's just totally lost my train of thought. I don't even know where I was going with that. It was going to be really good though. They mean well. It's just it kind of continues that path of getting handouts, because some of these people, they'll go bounce around and they'll get 15 free hunts in a year because they're a veteran, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know if that's where you want to go.
Yeah,
not real popular when it comes to.
So, but did you want to start the intro, and I'll keep all that because of video?
Yeah, just if people are listening to this, and I've had a technical issue off to the side, so I don't know what happened, but my 2 videos didn't want to record simultaneously. So some people are going to miss a good portion of the beginning video, but I think we're good now. We're recording both.
Sweet.
Well, that doesn't need to go in the segment. I can just reintroduce and we can start from here.
No.
Oh, okay.
Nah, we're fine. We're fine. Just put a little disclaimer in the beginning of the videos, like you're missing the first, whatever it is, 6 minutes of video.
Okay.
It'll be fine. Sorry. So I know obviously you sent a little bit about your bio, and I'll be completely honest. Bo and I, once you sent your bio over and told a little bit, Bo and I dug a little bit more to learn something about you. And let me tell you, you have lived a crazy ass life.
Yeah.
Especially after military, it's been crazy. So we want to jump into a lot of those things, but one of the first things I want to jump into is like, you grew up in a big family, a lot of kids. Like, what was that like growing up in a household full of that many kids?
Oh man, it was awesome. Christmases were fun and never a boring never boring. There was 13 of us in all, 9 boys, 4 girls.
9 boys.
To answer all the questions everybody gives, we weren't Catholic, we didn't have twins, and my mom and dad did have a TV.
All right,
get those out of the way.
Well, you didn't eliminate one. Were you guys Mormon?
Not Mormon either.
Just a good old country family.
Yeah, love the Lord, and the Lord says, arrows in the hands of a mighty man, arrows in the hands of a mighty man are children of one's youth.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad would always say, "Is like if I'm going to battle, I want all the arrows I got. I don't want just 1 or 2. I want as many as I can carry." So,
how do you manage to feed all those kids? Like, did he have a pretty stable kind of job? Like, I'm kind
of not at all. That's the funny part. It's not funny, but most people don't get it. He believed as much as I do that in Matthew 6 it talks about the Lord. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns the ravens. He owns all the animals. And he says, and they don't ever go hungry or starve. And he says, aren't you more important than they are? Don't you think that? Mm-hmm. So his viewpoint, he was a strength coach at Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. And then that's where he met my mom. She was a volleyball player. And then he got a job offer for Bear Bryant to coach for Alabama. And he turned it down because he felt like he needed to get in the ministry because he had gotten saved and started working. And so, no, he didn't have a stable job. He just taught young men the Bible, and we did a lot of hunting and growing our own food. Never went hungry.
People listening,
I'm 6'5". I'm a monster, and like we're all monsters. We're huge, a big family. Not just multiple. Yeah.
What's your guys' background?
What our heritage?
Yeah.
Scottish and Irish.
Okay.
Yeah.
They make some pretty big people over there.
Yeah, we got some big
Well, you said your mom was in volleyball, right? And your dad was a strength coach. I mean, that right there,
sense.
They were athletes all the way through, and
yeah. So
it was good. It was good. Rural Mississippi. And,
so
yeah.
Did you guys grow up like ranching and doing things like that? Is that kind of what has shaped what you're doing now?
Yeah, we did it. We grew up on 300 acres that we rented from, and my brother started training horses for people, and then it got into training. We'd get Mustangs out of the Dakotas, and he would train those. So I would always help. I did more of the green brake and put rides on him once he did all the hard stuff. So I did that all the way through high school, and so that's what got me into it. And then got in the Marine Corps and got away from it for a while, but now I got my own place, and my kids are all back into wanting to do it all, and so
do you think you'll raise them into like horsemanship and all that too?
Oh yeah,
that's cool
for sure. Yeah,
it's hard to come by these days. Like unless you know outfits, it's a very small world. Like once you start working on ranches and helping out, you start to realize that like everybody in that community knows each other, and you're like, oh, I'm going to this ranch, and they're like, oh, well, tell so and so I said hi, but you just don't see many. I guess I'll say it like the cowboy tradition anymore. You don't see many people that want to work hard as a family, grow up around animals and help animals and live off the land.
Yeah. And I think it's important. The crazier this world gets, the more important it is to know how to do all that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's all those crazy like really bad videos of people asking like, oh, where does your corn come from? Where does a French fry come from? Or like, where does your egg come from? And a lot of kids don't know until they get like in touch with the earth and like go out to a farm and understand where food comes from and like how the cycle of life and how everything was prior to the Industrial Revolution. Like it's really hard for people to connect with it. So I think it's critically important for folks to stay connected with how everything's created.
Yep, 100%.
I want to jump into a little bit of your military career, and obviously, like, what was that like? Like, did Mississippi kind of have a little bit of a push for you to want to enlist in the Marine Corps, or how did that all come about that you wanted to serve the country?
9/11.
Really?
I was 11 years old. Yeah, we were also homeschooled, so that's another cool little fact.
You're the same age as I am, because I was 11 when it happened.
Yeah, so you were probably in history class, weren't you?
I was in the hospital that day.
And
I remember. I think I had a seizure like 3-4 days prior, And so I was in a hospital in California, like taking some like neurologic tests. And I remember looking up at the monitors and watching it happen.
Mm. Yeah, I was on a roofing at 11 years old.
Jeez.
A neighbor was building a house, and I was helping him because I was, yeah, and that's I called my best friend Grant Jeffries at the time, the same age, and we decided when we got old enough we had enlist and go kill all the bad guys. And my older brothers beat me to it. They got there first. They got 3 older brothers that went before me to Army. One was a Cav Scout, an officer. The other one was he was a medic, 91 whiskey medic. Got to E5, went to state, got his commission, went to be a Ranger commander at 275, and then resigned his commission and went back to.
When was he a Ranger commander?
It's been a couple years, 3 or 4.
Okay, all right. After my time, I served in 275 as well, so that's why I was like, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
he was with them, and then so he resigned his commission and went back E5, and now he's
what?
Now he's yeah.
I didn't know you could do that.
Nobody did. It really pissed off a lot of the officers. So he could have gone back at E6 if you resign your commission. He rated to go back at E6, but if he went back to E6, the peers some reason they would be able to have a say so. So he was like, I'm just gonna F it. I'm going to E5, and they can't say anything. So he went from being a company commander to a team leader in the same week.
Wow,
I didn't know you could do that either.
And yeah, he's a lot more interesting than I am. He's doing whatever they used to call it CAG. I don't know what they're calling it now, but that's what he's doing.
I think it's still the same.
So
yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
And then the other one was a Marine. So 2 Marines, 2 Army.
So did he already get selected to go through CAG?
Yeah.
Did he? Wow.
Well, there's not that many, like, there are officers there, but there's not that many. And then there's also, if you actually want to do something, then you're typically not an officer. You have to be enlisted. So I can imagine, like, if his drive was actually
he's a trigger puller.
That's exactly. So I completely understand. Yeah. Well, I get it now. Like, that makes a lot more sense. But I had no idea you could do that.
Nobody would. It's pretty stupid if you're thinking about it any other way besides that.
What made you decide to go with the Marine Corps?
Propaganda. The war movies. John Wayne,
Oh yeah.
Iwo Jima and all that.
Yeah.
I guess that was my the reason why I chose them. They have better looking uniforms and.
That's true.
Yeah,
I will admit that. Well, especially at the time.
Yeah, they had some.
Well,
nice
now y'all are both Army, right?
No, I wasn't in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're in the Army. So, y'all's pinks and greens, y'all are pulling back around, it's giving us a run for our money. Those things are sexy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those look good.
They're sharp.
It's funny though, because you and I have a similar story to where we were the same age, and 9/11 is what inspired me. Dan also, because he graduated a year early in high school and then went into the Army. So he left, and we grew up together since we were 5. And,
wow.
And when he left the town that we were living in, that was hard on me. And in my mindset, I was thinking, well, I want to join the Marine Corps and trying to go into recon and become like a scout sniper in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of going to be my mission. And so I enlisted at the same age at 17, got a signature by my parents and all that. And people listening have heard this story, but I just think it's cool that you and I were kind of the same age when all this happened. Both want to join the Marine Corps. Obviously, you went through with it, and my family pulled me out right when I was in line at MEPS. And but I wanted to try and find a way to continue to serve, because obviously I was hearing from Dan when he would come home from deployments. He would describe some things, but like most people that have served overseas, they're not going to tell civilians so much of what's going on.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, man, it takes everybody in this country doing what we're doing to keep it going good, and people that I think that people mean well when they put a lot of emphasis on what veterans do. But in my opinion, if you're Joe the plumber and you got 10 people employed and you're taking care of 10 families and they're, and you're raising people that love this country and can contribute, that's just as important as what we did over there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, especially with the way Afghanistan ended, a lot of what we did over there, we sure thought we were doing the right thing, but probably being here contributing to what was going on here may have even been more important for our country than what I was doing. So, so don't cut yourself short. Is what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
it's just sorry, like, you know what's going on.
I don't want to dive too deep into the obvious, you know, what's going on. I'm sure you've heard enough from people that you're close with, but I'm just kind of curious to hear from your perspective as being in the Marine Corps. I mean, how was that when you heard about obviously the 13 that lost their lives and the recent events that have happened?
It was pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
I won't lie. It was pretty rough because I was over there not long ago. I was in there in 18, so
Really,
not long ago at all. And that, you know, we were hit by the same kind of. It wasn't, thankfully the big charge didn't go off, but the same thing should have happened to us. And it's frustrating because it shouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
We own the battle space. We're the bullies we're the ones with the teeth. And when you lose control of the battle space and they're all of a sudden cramming it all into one, like you're just begging for it to happen. That shouldn't have happened. It was just on every level. It almost feels like it was on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It really, like, there was no reason for that to happen.
It was really weird.
Yeah.
When we were watching it go down, we were saying the same thing.
It's such a hard situation to be put in because, you know, we were talking about this actually on a previous podcast about how in the military you're basically, I mean, you're following orders, whatever the orders are, but orders typically come from policy and typically from policymakers. They have no idea what's going on the ground. No matter how much they try and look at pictures, images, they get reports, things like that. They just don't have a direct connection to it. So you have these incredible influx of people who are trying to get out of the country. Some of them American citizens, some of them, SIV applicants, some of them just Afghan citizens. And they're trying to figure out how to get out. Of course, they're going to basically bum rush the few checkpoints there are to get in. And then you have incredible brave, and like when I saw the images and things of what these Marines and other service members were doing of actually like intermingling into the crowds to pull people out,
that's ballsy.
To check their paperwork, I was like, that's insane. And they're doing it because they're getting told, hey, you have to get these people out. You have to get these people out because you have a deadline. You have to get these people out. So they were put in a really hard position. And like you said, it should have never happened. It should, especially not like that. And I know it affected more people than I think a lot of people realize. And it's easy to for it to hit and then forget about it. And that's what happens for a lot of the general American population.
It feels like it's happening right this second. Like, it was really hot. Everybody was talking about it. Now it's like for next week they started talking about the mandatory whatever, and then they just...
Well, they're going to be back on the topic of COVID, and that's the hard part, is that the media wants to spin things to their benefit, and then once it's done, it's not hot anymore. It's out the window, but that's not what us Americans care about.
Yeah.
Us Americans are all feeling like, what the fuck, man? We need to come together and help each other out right now and get these people out.
And the thing about that, I don't know, did y'all see the video that one of the Marines posted? It was like the day in the life, and
what was cool about that? I actually was talking to him on his Instagram because I commented because I recognized the song, and I was like, "Oh, you put up Title Fight," and he's like, "Oh, you know Pop Punk?" I was like, "Dude, that's the music I used to listen to all the time." And I was like, "Well, great video. Like, it's cool to see that you are posting a little bit behind the scenes, but there was some brutal footage in there." Like of them like pushing people off the barbed wire and you know, and having to push people back, and I didn't know he had to take it down.
I'm so glad he had the ball. Yeah, his commanders, I mean his higher told him to take it down, but by that time it's already out. I'm so glad he put that up because it really was. I mean, you know what it's like. It's not very sexy over there.
No.
Most of the time it's just gross and ugly. And the video showed like it wasn't cool as in Call of Duty cool. It was like the kind that make you want to. It's just, you think about it, and that's what hurts me the most about this whole situation. And it's really been going on since war started.
Yeah.
But the old men, the ones that think they have all the power, they start all this, they create this mess, and then the decisions are made by 18, 19, 20-year-old dudes on the front. Mm-hmm. And those Marines are trained to kill. They are trained to kill. They're infantry Marines. That's their job. and then they're having to police, and they're having to decide who's. I mean, they are put in some situation. There's no training that could prepare them for what they did, and they did an awesome job.
Yeah,
and it just makes me so proud of them, and so pissed off at my government. I can't hardly stand it.
To stay that calm and to stay like that professional at that age is hard as young men to do.
Yeah.
When people are pushing you and people are spitting in your face and trying to break through, and you're trying to also treat these people with kindness because you understand their position, but you're also trying to do your job at the same time. That's a level of like, man, that takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah,
it does. And it's, and you have to remember, again, I just said it, but they're trained to kill. They're not trained to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they're put in this impossible situation. And then all they're doing is you have to suppress all your rage, all your anger, all this, because if you do one thing wrong, it's going to go viral all over the world. And America looks, even worse than we already do right now. And I don't know, those boys they've been in my thoughts and prayers a lot, because when you get back, you know what it's like. You suppress all that for a long time.
Oh yeah.
You might get out 3 years later, and before you even start to think about scratching into some of the stuff you suppressed, and it will come out someday.
Yep.
It's gonna come out, and it's usually ugly the longer you hold it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talk about it all the time. Is the reason we wrote this book. It's the reason why we told these veteran stories, or really had them tell their stories, because it's such an important thing. And I hope I don't know, maybe one of them listens to this, maybe a family member listens to this or whatever, but I do hope that they come back and they do share those stories, because not only are they going to forget certain aspects of it, like typically you forget the good times. Usually those are the ones that go by the wayside eventually, but those ones that were really hard are the ones that stick with you and you don't like talking about, and they come back to haunt you. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones that will come up from behind you and creep on you. And eventually, that's why a lot of veterans have problems processing things, because they don't talk about it until it's too late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What were, I want to kind of go back into your personal career, and what were some of the experiences like with, obviously you being in the Marine Corps and having deployments in South America and Afghanistan?
What was it like?
Yeah. Like when were you in? Like what years were you deployed?
So I got in at 19, a decade before that.
Okay.
2009 I got in. Yeah. And the last in 18 in Afghanistan, I didn't get shot or anything cool. I fell in were you in helmet at all?
I spent like a very short duration, 3 weeks there or something.
Okay. Well, they have these like big 12-foot pits that they dig down, and then they put their pump at the bottom to pump the well out of.
Mm-hmm.
I went in one of those and blew my knee out, broke my foot, and so I finished out the deployment and made it all worse. So I had a bunch of surgeries and I got back. So it was 2 years of medical.
Oh wow!
At the end of it, but I just January, my retirement just went completely through. So.
Oh wow! So that's 12 years. 12 years.
12 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting, rewarding. I would even, I love America, and our country's great, always has been, but our government sucks, and they're evil. I'm sorry if y'all can cut that out if you don't like it, but
no, we keep it raw.
and for me, I always thought like I was pretty aware of everything that was going on, and I realized in Afghanistan, that's when I started like I was just like, something's not right. Like, we're not here. This is not a fight for freedom. We're not here this game was not meant to be won. This is not, because all they have to do is let us do our job, and we'd win in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Us and the Rangers could take over in Afghanistan in no time if we could do it the way we would need to do it.
Yep.
Like, no doubt in my mind. But we're not allowed to, and the game was rigged, and it was rigged against us by our own people. So it was rewarding in a lot of ways, as far as the brotherhood and everything. But looking back at it, it makes me kind of, it's just tough. It's tough to see. I want to. It's basically Vietnam just happened again.
Yeah.
Only it was lasted longer. And I remember before I got in Vietnam, some friends of mine and mentors, they were in Vietnam, and they tried to tell me what it would be like, and it would turn out like this. And I didn't listen. And so the next one, I'm going to do the same. It's almost like I could see the next one happening and not be able to do anything about it. So I think honestly that this one's a little bit different. And I think that we really have a lot of good, salty, strong leaders in the veteran community. And I think that we're going to change this country.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that and that it came from you, because I was going to say that. And I've said that multiple times to people. And I think I've talked about it multiple times. I've said it numerous times, but I truthfully believe, out of World War II, we talk about the greatest generation, how they reshaped America. They created new jobs. They took up industry. They started major companies. They became our leaders of our community, teachers, all these different things, right? And you can't have 20 years of conflict without creating a new generation of people that are connected somehow. And we all are. And you learn things through combat that you don't learn in a peacetime military. And there's going to be, yes, a wave of people reflecting back on their service and realizing how they need to grow. But I'm hoping, and I really think that this is going to be the case, and I'm going to keep saying this until I wish it into fruition, but veterans are going to reshape America. Yeah. They will. They're going to be the new leaders of our businesses, of our industries, of our communities, of our government, hopefully, to really reshape it the way that it needs to be a stronger, more unified country. And you're seeing it more and more. Veterans are stepping up. I mean, look at all the veterans that banded together when Afghanistan was collapsing and people needed to get out. Yeah. All these veterans stepped up.
Went and did it.
They did it. Yep. They said, don't worry about it. Send me. I'll be the one that does it. Yeah. Like, you don't need to worry about this. Like, I understand that you are having a difficult time processing this. Continue to process it. We're going to act. And that's exactly what they did. And I think veterans, that's their one unique, an incredibly unique but powerful thing that they have to their benefit, is they will step up and act when the time is right and when it's needed.
I agree 100%. And I feel more confident now that that's happening and will continue to happen. Yeah. And I think that's why, I've been on a couple of podcasts this week, and every time I say it, people kind of gasp. But I'll straight up say I hate veterans. I do. And it's kind of,
why would you say that?
Why would I say that? Because I expect more out of them, and I look at them as like my own family. And when I see my own family messing up, like, I want to yoke them up. You know what I'm saying? And it's
that comes from you being passionate and caring, though. That comes from you having a love for people and expecting them to hold up to like your expectations. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It just shows you're empathetic. And
I just like to say it just to go ahead and get it out, because that's what it's kind of how I feel about, I don't know how y'all are, but I feel the same way about Christians today.
I agree. Me being a Christian, I agree.
Yeah, and I am too. But I see our church is so weak and just like milksop. Just nobody stands for anything. Everything's okay. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You don't believe that anything's true. And you look at what Jesus did. When did he hung out with the sinners and the harlots and the tax collectors and the blue collar fishermen and all the just the roughnecks. That's who he hung out with. Mm-hmm. Was cool as a cucumber with them. Loved them, took care of them. Who did he run through and whip and curse and flip tables and scream and holler? It was at the church, because he expected more out of them. Yeah. And they were doing the wrong thing. And Jesus also never sinned, so what he did was okay. So that's how I feel about the church, and that's how I feel about the veterans. And I say that to talk about the other side of what I just said. I don't think all the veterans are the leaders and strong and are going to change this country. I think that we have so many good caliber ones right now that have been quiet for a long time. Yeah. And now it's just like, all right, we can't. It's like, it's time to serve. It's time to serve now. Like what we did before when we sounded out of line, like we thought we were serving, but in my opinion, all what I did in the Marine Corps is just to prepare me for something else. I don't think that was my purpose. I think that was just a stepping stone. I think that was just some tools in my toolbox to help whatever it is, whatever my purpose is, whatever God put me on this earth to do. And examples of other people in history that did that. Where are y'all from originally?
I grew up in California. out in the desert.
California.
My dad was in the Air Force, so I grew up everywhere.
Okay. Well, some people call me a racist because I'm from the South. But if you read on history, General Stonewall Jackson, they still teach his tactics in West Point today. He was the first one to use the defilade in modern battle. He was amazing. Well, you look at his history, and you read up on him. He was a young lieutenant in the Mexican War, and 21, war hero, won a bunch of medals, got out, became a teacher, went and taught at VMI, and was boring, and all the kids thought he was weird, and they hated him. And he was in his 30s, and he thought his life was basically like he was just a boring old codger that just taught lessons at a university, and his life was over. And then the Civil War happened, and he became Stonewall Jackson, legendary, the man, who we all know today, who he is. And same thing with Lee, and same thing with General George Washington. He was a young veteran, got out many years, and then later on he stepped up, and it was his time to. So I think, and that's what I like to tell veterans like myself and like you, and even non-veterans, is like just the experiences, the hardships, the pressures that we go through, and when we want to complain and bellyache the whole time through it, like later on, that's part of what's gonna help us, I think, take this country back and do whatever it is that each one of us. We all have a different purpose here.
Yeah,
but we're gonna find it through hardship, not through a bunch of cushy living.
I mean, that's kind of what our podcast is all about. Is we keep everything raw. I think we answer it pretty brutally honest as much as possible. But we've been wanting to help change that conversation, help change that narrative, and help bridge that gap between the civilian and veteran communities, and figure out how we can all come together and not so much coddle people, but to really inspire people to be like, hey, after you hang up the uniform, your life isn't over, but it's just beginning again. So it's kind of like, maybe it's like the same for you. Maybe your military career was just a stepping stone to put you in the direction that you're on now. And it's not to take away from anybody's military experience, but I think it's like what you do then matters then, and it's a part of your life, and you should never take away from it. But now you're into this new community of people, and you're back into your civilian boots. It's kind of like now you need to focus on where's life going to take you, and who are you going to surround yourself with that's going to help motivate you and push you in the right direction.
I agree 100%. And I think, when you're sitting around a bunch of veterans, it always turns into old war stories, and everybody's talking about what they did and this and that and that. And that's part of it. And part of it I love, but then it becomes, the type, it's just the past is so much of who they are, because they invaded Iraq. That's what they're hanging on to. And like, there's no forward looking to a lot of them. And I agree with what you're saying. We need to, kind of empower them by slapping them in the dick a little bit, and just like, look, I don't really care about what you did. Honestly, I don't care about that. It's cool. We could talk about it every once in a while, but let's just not waste all, like, what are we going to do from here? What are we going to do? Take what we have, because we all, us that have surfed a little bit, I think it's what's the word? We're fortunate. Yeah. Very fortunate to have the experience and to have the, 19-year-old selves. A lot of kids aren't doing that, doing what we did, and having to face those hard struggles, and having to, see kids hurt and families torn apart, and having to, you're a compassionate, loving human being like me, who was raised to love the Lord and care about people. And then I'm over there also to kill people. And then you're trying to do both. And then you see people that are suffering, and you want to help them, but it's like, you got to be, it's just, it'll screw with you, but it also, you figure out who you are. Well, hold on. I didn't figure out how I was till after. I just put my head down in it and pushed through it. But the pressure cooker that was happening was the thing that really has started to show me that I didn't know who I was. I'd been told who I was for a very long time, and I had to figure it out.
Well, in military service, and especially people that go to combat, like I know I don't want to downplay anybody who hasn't been to combat, because I think anybody who serves, like, you're serving your country, and it does absolutely matter. And I would never take that away from anybody who's worn the uniform. But I do think people who've been to combat specifically, like, I think about it all the time as you've lived not only one lifetime, but truly many lifetimes. You've made more split-second decisions and life or death situations that nobody else has experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot to, like you said, pressure cooker. It's a lot to pack in a very short period of time. And oftentimes it takes a lot to unpack that and to process it and understand exactly everything that happened. But I think it's important to do that. And my next question for you is going to be, especially after retiring after 12 years, and you're medically retired, but are you still going through that process of kind of unpacking your service? Are you still going through the, reflecting back on what it all meant and what it means to you now?
100, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The past 3 years has been a really since 18.
Mm-hmm.
So just a real quick overview of what happened. I got back in 18, had a bunch of, I had a bunch of surgery as soon as I got back. And then my wife, into 2019 was a big year for me. I had 3 surgeries back to back to back. Never really been an injured person. I've always just sucked it up and gone. So to be like completely out was tough. And then my wife our 4th child, we got pregnant on a trip. So I was in my medical time, so I was starting my film career, and I had all my gear. I had all my gear that I've been moonlighting for a couple of years to build it up, and I had a job in San Francisco. Went there, took my wife because I didn't take her on a real honeymoon when we got married because I didn't have any money. I made my wedding band out of a $50 and hers out of a nickel. That's how broke I was, and that's no joke. I really did that. I got robbed in San Francisco. We parked at the bridge, went over there, looked at it. 5 minutes later, walked back, and professionals had come and broken into the SUV and took every,
a lot of people are doing that in that area.
$25,000 worth of gear.
Yeah.
And insurance didn't cover it because it was somebody else. It was a friend of mine's SUV, so it didn't cover it. And so we went from that to she had really bad complications with her pregnancy. And so I'm just getting back from Afghanistan, trying to roll in, get robbed from my new career that I was trying to start. My wife's sick, so I was having to take care of the 3 kids. She was bedridden, and she's tough as nails, so it wasn't like she was being a baby. And for 3 months, and then she had a emergency C-section, and the kid was born 3 months early. It was 2 pounds.
Wow.
And they did when I say emergency, they didn't give her any anesthesia. The only thing they did was wipe her with a cotton swab with alcohol before they cut.
And then just cut just to get it.
And just ripped them out. If you've seen Braveheart, the very last scene,
yeah,
exactly. Just that's the picture that happened.
Jeez.
So she's tough as nails. The doctor was tough as nails to make that decision because it was life or death, and she chose to do it right then on the spot, or my son would have died, and probably my wife. Then he was in the NICU for 65 days. So it was like, in that time of getting back, I couldn't sleep. My everything had just kind of happened, and I was like, I'm not sleeping. I got stomach issues. I got all this stuff stacking up. I hadn't slept in like 4 months. So I finally decided, I broke down. I was like, I gotta go talk to somebody. I was like, this is the most, people like me don't do that. Platoon sergeants don't go talk to counselors. We don't, But I started that, and then in the middle of that, all the stuff with the kid happened. I just started to try to let some of that pressure out of that pressure cooker is what I'm trying to say. I just started to all right, I got to start. It's getting tight. Let me let the pressure off and go get some help. And then that's when everything medically happened. She was in the hospital. She had a bunch of blood transfusions. We had to get him medevac to a different hospital that had a NICU an hour away. So I was up there with him. It was Christmas, and all my kids had croup, and they were on a different part of the state. So my wife, my kids were over here, and I was up for 65 days up in the NICU. It was like another deployment. I just shoved it all back down and just went with it. I didn't cry for I watched my son, his heart rate stop, and I was just like, well, he's dead. Stop talking about him. And I started praying for my wife. And then I was like, well, looks like she's about to die. And I was just like,
fuck.
Just, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
And I remember after the fact, the doctor came and she was crying, hugging me, and the nurses, and it was emotional thing for them because it was rough on them. And they were like, how are you so strong? And I'm I was, how it happens. You just have to you have to set aside all your feelings because you have to get through.
It's that compartmentalization. Like, honestly, again, one thing you learn in the military that can be a strength or weakness depending on the situation, and oftentimes it comes off as a strength, but it'll come back to bite you, especially in the wrong situation.
Always does.
Yeah.
So that locked that pressure cooker back down for a long time, and there's a bunch of other stuff. Friends, committing suicide, and family members dying, and a bunch of other stuff happened. Just kicked me in the balls the past 2.5, 3 years, I've really been. That was the kind of the crescendo of stuff that happened that made me just break down and be like, I can't do it. I can't keep living like I'm living. I can't keep just burying it all. I have to figure out how to get it out. And so I'm still figuring it out, and I'm still learning more about myself every day. And some of it's scary, and some of it, when somebody like my wife's known me I was a 19-year-old kid with a crew cut and shaved face, and now I'm got long hair, look like a hippie, and some of the changes, it worries her because she's like, that's not who you were. And like, well, I'm changing. I'm a grown man. Like, a lot's happened in 12 years. My dad died. I hadn't even told you about that. He died in my arms in 2013, and in front of my wife, my mom and sisters. And so that's a whole different thing that I had to work through. So, yeah, to answer that, sorry I rambled.
No.
Yes, I'm still working on trying to get some of that or all of that out. And it's been interesting. It's been a grind. It's simple, but it sure isn't easy.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Is I think I appreciate you opening up and sharing that, because I think for people listening, and Jesse, you may have repeated this multiple times on other podcasts, and I always hate to have people repeat their story over and over, but sometimes it can really help by just voicing it and getting it out. And so I appreciate you opening up and sharing that, because that's insane. And I think that when you think about life, and I constantly tell people this, is that it can be such a beautiful, rewarding thing, and it can really test you at times, and in the most random times, and sometimes in the most horrible of times. And it sounds like for you, it was like when you were just getting out and all this is coming crashing down. But it seems like now, I know in your mind you're still kind of getting things together, but it seems like you're doing well from the conversations we've had. And
I appreciate it, man. And it comes and goes, the only reason I'm about to say what I'm about to say, I don't really talk about this, so this is going to be new. This is one of my growing moments, but I think it's a human condition to think about checking out of this life early.
Yeah.
After hard stuff. Maybe not everybody. I think more people, there's more on that list than want to admit.
I think healthy people do, to be honest.
And people like me, people in the infantry, and people like you, your infantry dudes, like, who hasn't wanted to blow their brains out on a patrol or a standing post? That's like, that's just part of how we are. We just think about it. We talk about it. Like, one of our guys got shot in the head, and the first thing out of my mouth was like, "Look, lucky son of a bitch." Like that's all. That's what I wanted. He was fine. He made it. This Kevlar did the trick, but it was just like, that's just part of how we cope with stuff, and that dark humor, and a lot of it isn't even. We think it's humor, but it's something else. It's us trying to cope. And then, so it's been, in that 3 years of me trying, like I told you, with all that stuff going on, I've really had to dig down and survive some very, very dark times, very, very dark days and nights and weeks and months. And my way of trying to protect my wife and my kids is to not let them see that side of me, because it's terrifying, because it looks like, the way I was raised in the Marine Corps, if somebody did something, and I did it myself, you find out somebody was suicidal, then you automatically, like, I'm not going to pick him, I'm not, he's not going to be on my patrol, like, he's weak. That's just the way that I don't know how we can talk about it and change it, and I know the reason why it's that way is because so many of the weak body malingerers know that if they use that buzzword, then that gets them out of everything. And so that makes, alphas and actual legit dudes that are actually struggling suppress it and not even talk about it, because it's going to ruin who they are and what they look like. So that's how I am with my wife and kids. Like I've kept it to myself, and but it's it's something that I think that our society, especially in the veteran community, really across the board, I think it's a human condition, and I think that social media has something to do with it. I think the internet has something to do with it. I think all the technology, everything has something to do with this, whatever we're dealing with in our human race right now. And so veterans don't have a leg up on suicide and depression and anxiety. Neither do law enforcement. Like I've heard so many people like, oh yeah, I struggle with that, but like I never served, I wasn't, and it's like it's the same. Like if you've been through trauma, your body, like we respond pretty much the same way. It doesn't matter how vicious the trauma was or not.
Yeah.
Like, and so I don't know. I just think I think more what people would think is a strong looking alpha dog or whatever, they look, I'm a giant and people think I have my life together. So that's when you said looks like you're doing well, I felt the need to say like, it might look that way, but I am so afraid. If you follow my social media, I try to reflect it. I don't want to show just all the happy. My life's pretty great. I live a very great life. I'm super happy. I don't always feel it. I don't always feel happy.
But you got to go through pain to grow. So
yeah, I honestly feel like I am, but I don't feel it. And that's part of the struggle of getting through some of this stuff. So yeah, it might look like it, but and I feel like I am doing well, but it comes and goes. And now I have a lot more good days than bad days, and that used to be flopped. And I'm grinding and working, and anybody can get through it, and they just got to keep after it.
Well, you're right. It is a human condition, because it's a human condition to feel comfort. And when you're going through so much pain, whether that's physical, emotional, mental, whatever it is, it's being like, okay, well, there's a very clear way to get rid of this pain. It's an immediate thing.
I can check out real fast. And
so
not have to face it.
You're absolutely right. It is 100% a human condition, and I don't like talking about it, but I feel like this is the first time we have talked about it on our podcast, truthfully.
Well, this is the first time I've ever done it either. I don't like it either, but I have this heavy feeling of some strong people need to start talking about it.
I agree.
To show weak people like, oh, they okay, it's not just me. Like,
we're all going to be weak at times. I don't care how fucking alpha you are. There's going to be times where I don't care if you're in your closet in your shower and you're breaking down while your family's in the other room. It's going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with it. You're still a tough human being.
Well, and and what I was about to say is like the 22 a day. I hate that narrative, because I personally hate that narrative so much, because it's creating a path for veterans, right? You talk about it enough and it's like, all right, well, I could just be another statistic. It's not a problem. Like, people are going to forget. It's just a number. It's not a person to other people. But one thing that somebody told me recently that I really hadn't thought of is, with 20 years of combat, and especially with our advances in medicine and a lot of other things, like, there are more people who have come back and survived physical wounds that are having to deal with that pain. But then there's also people that have seen so much more than a lot of people can process, other than really since Vietnam, unless you were somebody who jumped into Panama or you went to Somalia or something like that, like very small factions of the military. But over the last 20 years, you have a huge percentage of the veteran population who've seen a lot of shit that is not pretty. And it's not a surprising statistic, unfortunately, when you think about all the pain that veterans are dealing with, but it's one that needs to change. And it's one that we've got to figure out the right way to fix it. And I think having conversations like this is absolutely, one of the steps in the right direction.
100%.
Right. Yeah. And that's awkward for me. I don't like talking about it. I especially don't like talking about it when I'm the one like admitting that I'm the weak one.
I think it goes into what everyone always says, is that you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to grow. Like, there's comfort in the uncomfort. And a lot of people don't want to face that. I think a lot of people don't, because I think a lot of people, it's just a pride thing. They don't want to come off weak. Everyone wants to come off like they have their shit together. They're doing well financially. There's nothing wrong. And if they describe anything to the contrary, that they look weak and that's unattractive and no one wants to be with them, no one wants to be their friend, whatever the case may be, it's not true. It's like we all go through our own ups and downs. I know people that run multi-million-dollar businesses that are stressing to the IRS coming after them. Like they've got all kinds of issues. So I think it's important. And again, thank you for, opening up and sharing that. I was actually going to make a funny comment because you mentioned it. You're 6'5", over 200 pounds. You're a big guy. I would imagine when you were knocking down doors, you might have been the first guy in, and I'm sure you were a big target because everyone's like, "Who's that?
Oh, yeah.
Who's that big guy knocking down my door? Who's that ogre giant kicking down my door?"
I'm surprised that I got back in one piece. I was always the one in training. I was always the one shot and put on the stretcher and make all the
They always put the heaviest
every time.
Oh, every time the heaviest guy gets carried every single time.
How good does it feel though? Like you were saying, your wife, was saying, you were different back then. You had a shaved face, maybe shorter hair. But how good does it feel to have a beard? Like to be different.
Well,
like you're not going to go back.
Off, man. I had a good one, and I broke down. I was like, my wife she likes like the fade look, and my baby, like I look like I'm 12. Like
I got a
was
young
staff
face
sergeant,
too,
and I look like I'm 12. I was like a 12-year-old staff sergeant, a giant 12-year-old, and. So yeah, in my line of work, in film work and going around and doing what even I do, like we kind of I need to look a little bit more mature than I am, and so I shaved my beard for her, and she loves it, but I still got the hair.
I got that.
And I'm growing the beard back as fast as I can.
Oh yeah,
like right now, I'm growing it right this second. As hard as I can.
It's funny.
You're just like,
just push it.
Come on.
The funny thing is I did the typical like don't cut your hair, grow your facial hair out. COVID 2020. And I never did before. I always had like stubble. I had the faded haircut and it looked clean, but I'm the same way. I looked really young. I'd be 30 years old and I'd look like I'm 21, 22. And I started growing it out and I'm like, I don't know, man. I can't go back. I can't go back to a clean face.
That's how I feel, man. And I've been like I said, I did it for my wife like a week ago. I had a pretty good little beard going. And it's like, I don't think I can ever cut my hair again, ever.
Yeah.
I want it down to my waist.
I got kind of an offhand question for you. What was the most memorable moment of you being on the Discovery Channel show Darkness?
Y'all did do your research.
Oh, yeah.
That was years ago.
I told Dan, I'm like, we got some questions that we've digging deep, and he's going to be like, what the fuck? You guys know how to interview
y'all
people.
Are good. I hadn't had anybody ask me that in a while. It was fun.
How'd you get on that? Like, how did that all happen?
I can't remember. Somebody reached out and they were looking for somebody with SEER school experience because their test, they had put a bunch of people in and they all, like freaked out the first 5 minutes in. And so they're like, well, we need somebody with some kind of training. So they got me. And then there was a SEER instructor out of California, female. And then there's just a mountain man out of the West Virginia. And there's us three. That's and they put us in a cave in a fallout shelter in Death Valley. It was a couple 100 miles worth of caves. Yeah. And they just took us to the back of it, split us up in 3 parts and said, go find your way out.
I think I know where that's out in Death Valley. I've done a lot of those
it was in like a
trips
little mining
out there.
Town. I don't remember because they had us blindfolded the whole time when I have no idea where it was. But the most memorable part was probably as soon as they let me go. Like they blindfold you and spin you around, and then they take you for 20 minutes in circles, and then 20 minutes in circles another way. They try to get me lost. Well, as soon as I was like able to do my thing, and they did really good. They blacked out cameras, no light, not one thing of light hit my pupil for 6 days.
Wow.
And with all the cameras they had going and all that, never saw a thing. Like they were really good.
6 days.
But as soon as they let me go, I started there's a breeze on my face, so I just started walking towards the breeze.
Yeah.
Feeling around, and they're like, where are you going? Like, you told me to get out, and they're like, fast you get out, they're like, you need to go this way. I'm like, but out's that way. Like, well, no, you need to go this way. I was like, no, you said is this a survival show or is this is this like a movie that y'all are directing?
Yeah.
Because you told me to get out. When the
we need 6 days of footage, damn it.
That's what they were saying. And I was like,
this is like day 2.
I was like, it's hit me I could have gotten out there in 45 minutes. I could have got out. but instead it looked like I wandered around for 6 days, and but it was fun. It was fun.
What do they do for like food and all that?
Well, it was a fallout shelter back in the Cold War. So there's like I randomly found some stuff. I'm sure they planted it there. I don't know, but I found some old cans of soup and stuff that were putrid and disgusting, and some old crackers that were pissed on by a bunch of rats. And the most memorable thing was I don't like rodents, and I woke up and they were like I still honestly I have PTSD from
rodents.
I still sleep with a blanket over my head because of that the time in that cave. Because I woke up and they were doing.
Oh
my
whiskers
God.
on my face, and I just don't like that stuff.
Nope.
And so that was fun. I'm still good friends with both the cast members I was in there with.
Do you think? So you did go to SEER prior to that?
Yeah.
Do you, like, because I went to SEER as well, so I'm wondering, like, did the training, especially in SEER, obviously very different, but at the same time, they teach you a lot of skills to survive and like how to think, how to be able to. Really, the big thing is like how to, when you're in the worst possible scenario, how to calmly just think through your actions and like what you're going to do. Like, did all that kind of flow back in and just be like, all right, I know what I need to do? Because
my events here, I don't know. Honestly, it was so easy. The show, it was like for one day they locked me in this room. And they're like, you can't leave for a day. This is isolation period. And they were trying to get us to like go crazy.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was the best. Like, it was just dark and I could just lay around. I had no responsibility. Like it really wasn't that bad. They were trying to get me to like crack and they were like, they pulled me aside and be like, well, so-and-so's talking bad about, they think you're a terrible leader and this, and I mean, just trying to like
They always do.
Because they want drama. They want drama.
Yeah.
They have that to get their story. And now that I'm in film, I get exactly.
Oh yeah.
If I went back and did it, I would be a lot more. It would have been a lot more interesting. They would have got a lot more out of me probably. But then I was just like, because they kept wanting me to be like lean on the part of like talk all these cheesy lines about being a Marine and all. And I was like, look, you can put the little thing on the bottom that says I'm a Marine. I'm not a Marine when I'm in here. Like I'm just Jesse.
Yeah.
Like, don't be trying to get me to be a cheese dick on national TV.
The funny thing is too about that.
They're like, you need to stay Semper Fi after that. And I was like, no. No.
You need to say.
That's where I would have been like, all right, I'm walking out.
Oh yeah, I did a couple times. That they anyway. I was kind of belligerent.
The funny thing is that a lot of people buy into all of that film narrative stuff, and like you just said, like for instance, I've had different friends that have been on those typical dating shows like Bachelor, Bachelorette, whatever, Love Island, all those. I've seen people that I know from LA on there, and I've seen them act like completely, totally different than how they are as a person.
Yeah.
And then people come to me and they're like, "Can you believe this guy? Like he did that?" I'm like, "I'm telling you,
that's not him.
They egg those people on. They literally tell you what to say, and they'll literally they'll have the film crew like instigate a lot of those things, and none of it's scripted. Like none of it's real.
I remember somebody told me this a long time ago that the only thing real about reality TV is the fact that you're watching it.
It's true. So that's my memories of it, was just being like, these people, like they wanted us to like, once we found the other two, I found the other two people. That was one of the missions. They want us to tie ourselves to each other.
Oh, like a rope line just to
like a rope line so we don't get lost.
Yeah.
I was like,
we can talk.
That's the dumbest. That is so stupid. Like I have my voice, they have ears. Like, it's not. It was just dumb stuff. They're like, well, at this point, you probably need to like pour out the can of soup here, so when you walk by, maybe you'll smell it and you'll know this is. I was like, I have one can of soup, and you're telling me to pour it out, so maybe I'll stumble upon it on the way. Like that's the dumbest stuff I've ever heard in my life.
They need some better people writing those things.
They
should have just had you guys be like Human Centipede and then find your way out.
It was more interesting.
Definitely more interesting.
After you ate some soup.
Yeah.
So, obviously you've been getting into film, but I'm curious because especially like growing up in the lifestyle you did, like on ranching, like hard work, labor, things like that. Why are you? I guess you have your interest and passion in storytelling and film and producing and things like that.
That's a really good question. The My dad was a man's man. He was a strength coach, all American football player. Um, a month before he died, he was still out squatting me in the gym. He was just a he was a he's just an alpha, but he also played guitar and he drew and he wrote poetry and he was a great blend of both.
Mm-hmm.
He was a warrior poet, and the example that he had always used was King David. You look at him, and he was the king said, if you go cut 100 dicks off of the Philistines, I'll give you my daughter. So he went and cut 200 dicks off and brought them back in a sack, and he killed the giant, and he did all these amazing things he did, but he also played the harp and wrote poetry and sang and danced, and he was an artist. And so that was as a child, that was the way I was raised, is like, you can be both.
Mm-hmm.
You can lean into both really hard and be a blend of that. And so that was, honestly, it was my dad. I went on a trip 2002 to DC. We went and saw DC for the first time, and we saw the Pentagon with the burnt hole in it from the year before.
Yeah.
And I just had one of those little disposable wind-up cameras, or not disposable, but the little film ones. And my dad went and got 13 of us. He had a lot of film to develop because we all had our little cameras taking pictures. But he pulled mine. He may have done it to everybody, but he pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, like, you've got an eye for this. Like, you see how this looks." And he was like, "You've got something. Like, you got to pursue that. You're good at it." And as a 12-year-old kid that was like a troublemaker and was always getting disciplined and everything, that was like exactly what I needed to hear. And so I thought, from then on, I was like, I'm an artist. Like, I got this. My dad said I was good at it. So that's what got me interested in it. And film and movies was something I always loved, and watched all the old stuff, Jimmy Stewart's and Gary Cooper and Abbott and Costello and all the good old classics. And so when he died in 2013, he had been telling me, he looked at my work and he was like, "You like, just go start charging what the professionals charge. Yeah, just do it." And I was because I was still in the Marine Corps and I was trying to like do both, but I was trying to figure out how to make a living when I got out. So when he died, I just like, well, it's time to start. Just jump in and do it. And so photography is what got me into it. And then I did a film on a veteran in Vietnam who, anyway, went to Sundance, and it was my first try at film. And so that was a boost of confidence and kind of got me more into the film side of things.
Well, that's huge. Yeah. And I think it's cool to hear that, because from one creative to another, we've had podcasts where I've talked about how I wish there was, more veterans in the creative space, photography, filmmaking, whatever the case may be. Hell, I've even been wanting to do some kind of workshop with veterans that might find interest in photography, where I can teach them the basics of it and maybe the business side of it. But it's cool to hear that your dad spotted that, out of your 12 other siblings, pushed you to do that. Even through your military career, it was still an interest in the back of your mind, and then you pursued it afterwards. I don't think a lot of people do that. And so it's kind of interesting, to hear what brought you into that. And you're doing more filmmaking now than photography, right?
Yeah, I'd still do a lot of both, but I definitely do a lot more film. It just it pays a lot, to be honest. It pays a lot better.
It pays a lot better, and more people need it. I think right now a lot of things are going towards video. Need it.
Yeah, but I still really honestly, and before I used to think I wanted to be a professional photographer, and then I became one and started making money at it, and I did it for a while, and I was like, well, okay, I still got, like, that wasn't it. That's not I'm still itching. So I went to the next thing, and I went to the next thing, and honestly, I just think I'm a storyteller, and I use a camera sometimes and still. Sometimes I write my own words. Sometimes I draw. Sometimes I use a bunch of different tools, but so I'm a little bit of all of it. I enjoy it. I just love humans, and I hate them at the same time, and I like to document them.
Well, they're an interesting medium to try and to try and explain, and obviously there's millennia of trying to do that, and stories have been told many different ways. But like, what I guess is your style of storytelling? Like, do you typically tell first person narratives? Is it more of like third person? Like, what's your style, I guess, that you typically align with?
Oh, that's good. Um, I have a lot of different ways of doing it, and I'm still trying to, I guess, figure out what my style is, because a lot of what I do, I freelance, so I kind of take my skill set and I go do it for somebody else's project.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't actually went and done my. I have this one, and maybe we'll talk about it offline. Y'all can help me, because I have this idea for my own that I've just been bogged down doing everybody else's. I haven't done my own thing, but I want to. And but I just my thing is I want to highlight people's stories that most people just look over and don't. It's around us every day, but we don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and show the glory in everyday life in this country. People that are just grinding and going
Yeah.
through stuff that that if you really take the time to get to know the personal details of people's stories, it's like, man, like you don't have to be a triple tour combat veteran to do something cool. Like this nurse
No.
is like a badass, and she's just like going through this horrible life altering 6 years of her life because of all the series of stuff going down or whatever it is. It's like I want to highlight humans outside of the veteran space, because I think a lot of good people in the veteran space are highlighting the veteran side, and I still love doing that. My thing
Mm-hmm.
was World War II guys.
Mm-hmm.
I had a project with we're working with Mark Wahlberg's production company. Him and Nate Borg and I were doing a project on Iwo Jima Marines,
Mm-hmm.
and it was awesome. Spent a lot of time with them, but COVID came, the whole deal. That's my favorite, is getting their stories. Um, I feel like my style, I guess, is I think because I get people to open up in ways that a lot of times they've never done before,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people want to ask, want to know how I do that, and honestly, you just have to care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to honestly really give a rip and care about them, and then shut your mouth and let them talk,
I
and let them feel that you are understanding them. Don't break eye contact.
Yep.
Don't be checking your phone. Don't look at your watch. Like, honestly be into, and people in the veteran, when I'm talking to the older veterans, it really helps that I'm a veteran. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
really helped them open up about in ways that others couldn't get. But,
It's cool to hear you say that, because I had experienced that for the first time when I was interviewing veterans for our book. I drove across the United States 4 times, across 42 states, photographed 71 veterans, all on film, and I had to sit down in their living room or in their work or whatever the case may be, and exactly what you said, shut my mouth, listen, and really be interested and ask the right questions. And every once in a while you would have the people that were kind of iffy. They were kind of like, I don't know if I want to share my story. Like, I don't feel like it's as important. And then you'd sit down, and I noticed a pattern with almost every interview. You'd have that awkward kind of 5-minute period in the beginning. And then
yep.
after you would ask a question that would somehow relate to both of you, or it would be like, oh, me too. Like, and then you would have that common bond, it would just flow. And then I would
Yep.
just let them speak for an hour or whatever they'd wanted to talk
Yep.
about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because you're doing opposite. You're kind of telling the good stories. And outside of our project with this book, it's like, I want to do a personal project where I photograph and interview, some of my friends that are Navajo out in Arizona. I want to do a whole book and series on the Navajo and the culture there. I want to photograph and interview skinheads, people that are into meth, and just interview the crazy, weird people that most people would ban from society, because I want to know what drove them to that point, and I want to understand that culture.
And understanding that culture and able to tell that in a way with your skills will help other people have I don't want to say compassion, because that sounds, but be able to
Understanding.
relate and actually understand a little bit more, and maybe help and kind of bridge that gap between. I love that idea.
Yeah, and I know people listening are like, well, we can't understand a skinhead who's racist, but it's kind of like, yeah, but where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you weren't born a racist. So where did that come from, and what drove them to that? Like, I want to know their childhood, their upbringing, what got them into that movement. And so there's just so many interesting people and stories out there. And I think what really opened that up was Dan and I and Tom working together, photographing and interviewing veterans, to now it's kind of pushed me into more of a photojournalist documentary kind of artist, where I got so used to photographing models, and I hate to put them down, but you're doing commercial work. There's no real story involved in that. You're just looking at pretty girls and you're like, okay, but now it's like, I want to have something real.
I am with you 100% on that. I don't like working. Someday I'd like to do big like big films, but my favorite are real human beings.
Yeah,
and there's nothing like working with just raw people.
Yeah,
I'd also do a lot of producing for. I don't know if you've heard of Blood Origins. It's in the hunting space, but it's a documentary style. So I do a lot of their episodes, and that's what I look for is just the real raw, who nobody else would think to talk to, and go do a story on them and figure them out, and I think it's relatable. It helps.
Well, it's a perfect segue into the next question I was going to ask is like especially being raised kind of in the outdoors and doing things like that, but like what started you in that? What keeps you, I guess, engaged in being an outdoorsman and trying to, I guess, continue to be one with nature in a certain sense?
It's funny. I ask these kind of questions to people all the time.
Well, now you're
I've
hearing
never
it.
had one. I've never had anybody ask me. So that's good. Let me think of that for a second. It's just the way God intended it to be. It's humans have been having to feed themselves since the beginning of time.
It's traditional. It's ethical.
They didn't just go to the Dollar Tree or to the Dollar General and get you your fat cakes and whatever for your snack. You had to go out and kill a rabbit or something.
Yeah.
And I think that technology and all of our society that's gone super modern and big cities and trains and everything's covered in cement and all this stuff, like it's all great and has a good place for it. But I think that there's just something that human beings need in breathing fresh air and walking barefoot in the dirt and eating something that they killed and drinking out of the ground and experiencing life outside of society.
I agree.
The bustle of society and having the pollen from the trees help your immune system and eating the bee, eating the honey from your local bees so you have you don't get allergies around that area. And it's just part of being human.
Yeah.
And it's how I was raised. It's how you hear a lot of people talk about harvesting animals. I went out and harvested this animal because it sounds better to the anti-hunters. And I don't harvest anything but like corn and stuff. Like I kill animals. And I think for me, it's me explaining that as a kill is, if I were to change that word and try to pretty it up, it's actually being disrespectful to that animal because, they had for my family to eat, something had to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I try to pretty it up, like, no, it was like we planted that deer and it grew and then we harvested it. Like, no, I had to kill it.
Yeah, it's unfair.
And it's, I think that's why God created a lot of what he did and gave us dominion over it. And I think it's a very special bond that you have. There's something good. I'm sitting here looking at a bear skull that I just got back from last year's hunt. And then one bear back there my son wears a bear claw around his neck. He's been wearing it for a year. And we're still eating the bears that we killed last year.
And bear meat's great.
Yeah. It's good. And it's important, I think. And I think the way our society's going, and I think the way this country's going, and I think the way this world's going, something's going to happen pretty soon it's going to be really hard on a lot of people. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I just don't think that we can keep going like we're going. I think we're going to have a little bit of a short time of some very difficult things. And I think people that know how to, kill and eat and grow things and have kids that already know how to do that at a young age. And I think, that's real living. Everything else doesn't really matter. And, the pandemic, quote unquote pandemic, kind of did that at the beginning. Everybody stayed home and tried to help out and do their own thing. And for a couple months, it was like real living.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have any meetings. All my work in LA and New York was done. Like I was I was off the grid, and I just lived with my family, and we just had a blast. And I've kind of changed my view on and goals a lot of ways since all that, because I've seen what's more important.
Isn't that?
I still love the arts. I still want to pursue it, but it's like, if it doesn't work, like my purpose right now is my family, and spending time with them and raising them, and preparing them for in case something bad happens. And even if it doesn't happen, they're still prepared. And
But isn't that like an incredible and powerful feeling? Because I feel like you don't have many people that, going back again to what I said earlier, that practice that lifestyle anymore. And I'm not knocking anybody that doesn't hunt, that, doesn't want to do it, that doesn't want to live off the land. But there's something for me, like Dan and I both hunt, and I can honestly say for myself, and I'm sure Dan would agree, that you just feel better being out in nature, living off the land, fishing for food for that night if you're camping out along the river, or hunting for food and providing it to your friends and family, and killing that animal with ethics. And it's kind of like what you said, you brought up this whole like kind of alpha thing earlier. The problem, I think, with a lot of men that you're seeing right now is so many men are trying to be alpha, and they're almost doing it to like, they're doing it in a way to like attract females, but they're not truly like understanding the idea behind it. And so I think that you're seeing a lot of these guys that are like, I'm alpha this, I do this, I make this much money, I act this way. I think half those people, like a lot of hunters I know, dude, we could take you up to the woods or the mountains and you'd be praying to be out in a body bag in 2 days. Like you just won't make it. Like, and there's something so, like, I really look up to hunters and outdoorsmen, because they know how to survive and they know how to provide for people, and they don't try and post it on social media and just showcase it. Like they just live that lifestyle and they're real about it.
Right. All right. Yeah.
But and
I agree.
To follow up with that, I'm curious, how did you bag a record-breaking 792-pound alligator?
You did do your research. Goodness gracious. That was a long time ago.
I'm going to bring up somebody who's like, damn, I was 14 years old. How the hell?
I don't remember. That was pretty long ago. Yeah, it was a buddy of mine. He drew a tag. I'd never been hunting for gator. And he was like, hey, I got a tag. I can kill it. And I just need somebody to go with me. So I went with him, and him and the guide, and there was 3 of us in a, the 15-foot War Eagle boat, and went out. In Mississippi, you have to snare it first. You have to hook it. So we had these deep sea fishing rods, and you hook it and reel it in before you can shoot it. And we fought it for an hour and 10 minutes or something. And it bit the boat and tried to. I mean, he was mean. It was funny because I went to leave, and I went to hug my mom because I was home, and went to give her a hug. Told her what I was. She was like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go over to the other side of the state on the river and go alligator hunting." She was like, "You don't like lizards." It's like, goodness, you're right. I hadn't thought about it.
That's why I'm going to kill one.
I was like, I'm about to go. And then that night, I went out, and the only time I've ever been gator hunting, we got a 792-pound gator, 13 foot 5 inches long, and was a state record.
That's crazy.
Cool.
That's like,
I've seen some big gators before, and I'm an idiot that tries to grab their tails and do a bunch of stupid shit with them. That's a huge alligator.
Well, it was funny because go ahead.
Because I was gonna say I've gone elk hunting a few times, and I think the one that we got one year was like, I don't know, 650 pounds, something like that, that's
a good size elk.
It's a good size elk. But to hear a 790-pound gator, that's like, that just sounds crazy to me. I don't even understand how something that big can waddle around or swim in the water. Like, it's crazy.
Oh, and fast too. I mean, it was interesting. It was funny that after that amount of time, it was just adrenaline dump. Once we killed it, we couldn't get it in the boat. Like, it was weight. I mean, it's 800 pounds pretty much, and it's dead weight. And I was like, dang. And I don't like creepy crawlies. I was born in the swamp, but I don't like it. I don't like getting in there with the snake. I don't. But my adrenaline was gone. I was just like, well, so I had to jump down in there and like hold on to it and hang on to the boat, and we got. And I was like, alligator eyes everywhere watching us. Looking back, I was like, I don't know what I was thinking.
And you got the water moccasins and all that out there.
Yeah, it made their cover of the Marine Corps Times. They had the big old gator on it, and it was funny.
That's crazy.
Funny. Yeah.
I don't even know how you would even begin to, like, for people listening, when like I, bow hunt and started learning how to do it a lot more from a mentor of mine who taught me how and took me on a lot of hunting trips. And when you're putting a stalk on a deer or an elk, it's like, you're usually up glassing on a mountain or, trying to find the big ones. And then you find one and you put on a stalk where you try and get close to them and put them down. I don't know how you would stalk a gator. Like, I don't know how you would try and find the biggest gator in a swamp.
It's tough. Yeah. It's because all you see is their eyes.
Yeah.
And, the wider they are, the bigger their head is and the bigger they are. But I wouldn't have been able to pick it out. The guy told us he was like, "That's a big one. Let's go get that one." So we went and got that one. Ended up, he was the good one.
Damn,
that's insane.
Hundreds of eyes. I mean, you would sit there in spotlight and just turn a circle, and they're just hundreds.
I'd love to photograph something like that. Like go on like a hunting trip out in like the bayou or like swamps and just photograph that. That would be such a cool story.
That is one area of the country that I'm just like, you know what? I just have no desire. Listen, Louisiana. So I went to ranger school, and you do Florida phase where you're walking through the swamps in the panhandle of Florida and southern Alabama. And so I've walked through it all. I know how nasty it is and how nasty it can get, and I hated every step of it. So I don't want to do it again.
Oh no.
I think it's pretty to me. Like I like the culture, I like the food. I like hearing the insects, and you see like the little swamp boats and swamp homes. You got the old cypress trees growing out of the water. It's pretty to me.
Oh, it looks cool. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It looks cool. I'm just saying I don't want to get in it again and walk around in it.
That's the difference between us infantry guys. It's like snow's beautiful. I don't ever want to walk in it again. Like I don't want. I love it looking at it through a cabin or a ski resort, but I sure don't want to be out in it. Goodness gracious.
That was the one thing I took away. I was like, I never want to be cold again. I never want to be cold again.
Yep. Same with swamp. I'm good if I'm on a boat, but don't put me in it.
Yep. So I have one more off the wall kind of thing. I also found out, or how did you find it?
He was telling me about it.
Yeah. So you were a bouncer at one point. Yeah.
He's like,
obviously you're a huge. Going? I was gonna say, obviously you're a huge guy already, and so it makes sense that somebody would want you to be a bouncer. But what was that, I guess, experience like?
It was a blast. It was one of the best jobs I ever had.
Really? You got to beat up people?
Yeah, I had. Oh yeah, I got to take out aggression on people, and I had a code of ethics I would live by. I did never swing at anybody. I never hit anybody unless they hit me first, and I was always really nice. I was super nice. I wasn't a jerk. I was super nice to people, but when they wanted to throw down, so usually the big guys don't get a lot of action because they're huge.
Yeah.
But then the people that actually want to fight them usually know more. So like I can handle myself pretty good, but if a little tiny dude comes up to me and just really wants to fight me, I'm like, he probably knows something I don't. I don't. But it was fun. I had to quit because it became too enjoyable.
Mm.
I enjoyed hurting people. They called me the Greek beater. And at one point, it was actually a bunch of Army dudes. It was in a college town, and I knew a lot of the guys that were in the. My brother was going through ROTC at the time, and because anyway, one of the prior, he was a ranger before. He was at the bar, and he came grab me. He's like, "Hey, this guy's disrespecting my girlfriend. I'm going to take him out back and beat him." I was like, "All right, cool. Just don't let it get out of hand." So I went out there to watch it, and they started fighting, and the girl ran out there to try to break it up, and then the other dude ran back and punched her in the face, and then I turned zero to black in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Jumped straddle at him and was pummeling him in the face, and then all his frat boys, I can't remember what frat it was, they all emptied the thing and jumped on me, and so it was me and two Army dudes, and we beat an entire frat house, like 15 dudes.
Sounds about right.
And I don't know how. It felt like one of those old Roy Rogers movies where you're just punching left and right, just looking in everywhere, and people, ripping their shirts off, and all of a sudden somebody called the cops, and the blue lights are coming. So we went from beating and curb stomping to like it was over, and we're like helping them up, like, "Hey, that was a good fight. Let's go." We were just being normal, dude, normal veteran stuff. And they didn't know what to do with, like, we were just curb stomping them. And then we're like, "Hey, get out of here before the cops here. It was a good fight. Like, you need a ride home." And they're like, "What?"
That's the thing, though. You can't really do that anymore. Like, I've talked about it way back on a previous episode to where I felt like the most humiliating thing that can happen to you is getting punched in the face. And back,
slapped in the face.
Oh, that's true.
The most humiliating thing is getting slapped in the face. Most humbling thing is getting punched in the face.
Humble. Yeah,
well, I've had both. I've been slapped by a few females, and then I've been punched by a few guys. But I think it's
when a dude slaps you, you're okay.
Yeah, exactly. If you get slapped by a dude and then you just take it, I don't know. But it's kind of like, I just remember growing up in the high desert where we would just get in fist fights at the skate park, or we'd get in fist fights in high school, and then you become friends after. Like, you'd pick each other up and you'd be like, are we done? Cool. And then like you'd end up becoming friends. Nowadays, it's almost like people just press charges. Like people will talk shit to your face. And
we need more of that physical stuff. People wouldn't be near as, we're a soft society.
Yeah.
We're about to get put through the ringer, and we're gonna have to be tough pretty soon, I'm afraid.
Oh yeah.
What do you think are some of the biggest stereotypes that you've experienced with your previous, job or career being a bouncer?
Stereotypes with me,
just in general,
or I don't know. I don't know if it's just bouncer, but everybody. I love to kind of blend it back. What we were talking about being an artist and somebody that likes to hurt people at the same time. When I show up, I look like just a meathead redneck. I would show up to it like I'd shoot a wedding or something on a weekend, and they thought I was a security showing up. They're like, wait, what? You're the photographer? Like, what? And I love that. And the same with the bounce. People, they assume I'm just like just a retard because I'm a giant retarded looking dude, and then they get to talk to me, and I can talk about the arts and talk about whatever. I like to surprise people.
Yeah.
But I get stereotyped a lot as being just big and dumb.
That makes sense.
That's what I am most of the time.
Well, I think it's good to break those stereotypes, especially, and I think it's really cool. What you're continuing to do, not only just, we were talking about this actually on a previous episode, and I think it's really important how, only 1% of the American population have served in the global war on terror, but it's rare to find 1% really in any career outside of typically, middle management, finance, maybe medical, but really that's where a lot of veterans get pushed. Maybe a lot of manual labor jobs and things like that, but there's not that much in the arts. It really isn't. It's way less than 1%.
Oh yeah.
And then on to make that percentage even more is the infantry guy, the infantry dudes in the arts is even less. Usually they're in law enforcement or they're in some kind of armed security or something like that. And so I think that our society, and it's been that way through the time with human history, like the storytellers are what keep keep us in line. And I think that there's a lot. I think what we're trying to do, all three of us, is very important for our society.
Yeah.
And I think that storytelling needs to be done the right way. And but I think we need to make sure that we keep in mind that what we're doing is almost a sacred thing, because it can impact a lot more. It can impact a lot, and if we're doing it right, it will.
Yeah.
So that's, because if we don't tell it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it might not be the right way. So
exactly.
Well, oftentimes it's spun to whatever narrative or whatever, I don't know, reasoning they have to tell the story. And that's why, going back to what you were saying, and what we've done is like, let people tell their story. You can be a storyteller still, but allow somebody else to tell it. Yeah, and
exactly.
I think,
and that's what a true storyteller is. It's not taking their story and then telling it back in a different way. It's asking them in a way that they can communicate their story, and giving them the opportunity to do so. I think that's what the best storytellers are.
I agree.
100%.
Ones that are telling it true. And with that said, as we start to wrap for this episode tonight, I want to know, what are some things that you're working on right now, and how can people follow along?
Okay, right now, I've actually, let's see, I have a few that I can't really talk about just yet. But right now, I'm just enjoying. I'm working with blood organs a lot,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a couple, once or twice a month. I'm traveling with them, and then I do right now. I told you earlier offline, but I'm doing a lot more living for a living and less working for a living. So I am. I got my wife and kids around here, and we're doing all kind of stuff around here with our. We got a little. I'm in my little barn here that we board horses out of, and I got rental properties and Airbnbs, and I travel and do these jobs. And we went to Montana for a month. I took my kids and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
um, right now, I'm just kind of I'm doing some jobs here and there, but I don't have anything super cool to tell you as in a big project. I
Yeah.
have one or two in my mind that I'm not supposed to talk about yet, but
And we can follow up, and I think we'll
yeah,
link your social media, we'll link everything, so if people are interested in seeing the projects that you're working on as an artist coming up, they'll have those channels to do so. And I know that I travel, I think a little bit more. I got a little bit more time on my hands than Dan, but I'd personally love to come out, and meet you and see if we
heck
can
yeah, man,
somehow all work on a project together. I like getting down to Missouri as much as I can. Montana, I try and work
yeah,
outfits up there with some of my family. So
yeah.
at some
I'm in
capacity,
Mississippi, by the way, not
or sorry,
not
Mississippi,
Missouri.
excuse me.
No, just making sure you knew that.
Yeah.
I'm proud of my state, so I didn't want other people to think I was from Missouri. But yeah, man, anytime y'all are both welcome. And maybe we'll meet up in Montana if you go out to the gala.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jesse, I appreciate
Um,
your time and just for you wanting to be on the podcast and share your story. It's great to, like I said before, unofficially, meet you and have you on here.
for sure. I appreciate both of you. Look forward to shaking your hand one day.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
absolutely.
All right. God bless.